Good evening once again, ladies and gentlemen. In our news bulletin for tonight, Prime Minister Wael Halqi has stressed the deep fraternity relations between Syria and Lebanon, stressing the importance of bolstering these relations and activating them in various fields in the interests of the Syrian and Lebanese peoples. Al-Halqi's remarks came during a meeting today with leader of the Syrian Socialist Nationalist Party in Lebanon, Assad Hardan. The Premier expressed the Syrian government and people's appreciation of the stances of all the national Lebanese figures and parties that reject the conspiracy targeting Syria to undermine its national unity, weaken the capabilities of its army and destroy its economy. He clarified that the bet on the collapse of the Syrian economy and pound has failed due to the government's intervention and the successful economic measures it has taken, which led to improving the Syrian pound's exchange rate against foreign currencies over the past few days. On his part, Hardan called upon all honest people in the Arab nation to come to Syria's defense and be on hand in the face to the conspiracy hatched against it. He considered that Syria constitutes the cornerstone and the last fortress defending the Arab rights, dignity against the Western and Zionist schemes that aim at taking over the region and dividing its countries to secure the superiority of Israel. Minister of State for National Reconciliation Affairs Ali Haider has said that the bets on undermining Syria have failed, pointing out that the Syrian institutions are strong and the Syrian army will confront whoever tries to tamper with Syria's security. Celebrating the birthday of the founder of the Syrian Socialist Nationalist Party, Antoine Saad al-Assad Hall in the Public Library in El Harmel, Haider added that the situation of the Arab countries is critical, calling for unity in the face of the Zionist enemy. He stressed the importance of holding a political dialogue. Iranian Deputy Foreign Minister Hossein Amir Abdullahian has expressed Tehran's deep concern over the use of the chemical weapons by terrorists in Syria, warning the US, Britain, France, and some regional countries that are supporting the extremists of the repercussions of this act on the region's security. In a statement yesterday, Abdullahian said, Iran, the biggest victim of chemical weapons-related issues, strongly denounces the use of these weapons by the extremist terrorist groups operating in Syria under the name of opposition. He expressed deep regret over the use of chemical weapons against the people and army of Syria. The Iranian official stressed the responsibility of the governments of the US, Britain, France, and some regional countries for arming the extremist groups in Syria, warning them of the consequences of this act on the security of the region. In the Latakia countryside, our armed forces continued to chase the terrorist groups and destroyed 2 warehouses full of weapons and ammunition in the village of Al-Ghamajiyya and a terrorist hideout. They killed all the terrorists inside, including their leader, Mustafa Hashim. In Idlib, our valiant armed forces killed and wounded a number of terrorists who carried out sabotage and looting in the countryside of Jisr al-Shur. They also killed and wounded many terrorists in several areas around the town of Bench and Nairab. In Deir ez-Zor, the security forces stormed a hideout of armed terrorists in Jura quarter. They killed and wounded many of them, including Isa al-Muwasha and many others. The American Wall Street Journal revealed the fact that CIA have trained terrorists in camps in countries near Syria and have supplied them with intelligence information. The paper exposed a dangerous change in dealing with Syria by the U.S. supporting mercenaries terrorists. Washington also used satellites to gather information about the Syrian Arab Army, the movements of the Syrian Air Force, and the Syrian warehouses of weapons. The CIA also sent some of its agents to Turkey to observe the operations of smuggling weapons from the Arabian Gulf into Syria. The Popular Committee of Solidarity with Syria and its leadership in occupied Palestine organized a sit-in at the main entry to the village of Ara and Arra in the lands occupied in 1948. The participants condemned the murder of the great cleric Dr. Muhammad Said Ramadan al-Bouti at the hands of the forces of evil, darkness, and extremism. The sit-in was joined by various forces, movements, and parties in Palestine. They carried placards denouncing the policy of the US, Europe, Turkey, and some Arab states which support terrorism in Syria. They also raised Syrian and Palestinian flags and photographs of the martyr of Islam, Dr. al-Bouti. In the town of Ramallah in the West Bank, Bishop Atallah Hanna of the Roman Orthodox in Sabstia joined this activity and gave a faithful appreciation in his obituary of Dr. al-Bouti. Iraqi Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki has stressed that the cases of extremism in some Arab countries stem from vicious currents, in fact, supported by some states. The terrorists are ignorant and feed on grudges and hatred instead of love and enlightenment. In an address at the inauguration of the celebration of Baghdad as the capital of the Arab culture, he stressed that Iraq would continue to confront the attacks of sectarianism and obscurantism. Their terrorism would never prevent Baghdad from carrying out its cultural mission and innovative role. Over to Lebanon, a cautious calm prevailed in Tripoli city north of Lebanon today after the clashes have stopped as traffic remained semi-paralyzed, that is, especially on the international road that connects Tripoli, Al-Badawi and Al-Akkar near the Syrian borders. The National Agency for Media said that clashes renewed yesterday between Jabal Muhsin and Darb al-Tabana as sounds of shells and medium-range weapons were heard in the city and the neighboring areas as the Lebanese army fired back at the sources of fire in an attempt to stop the shooting. The media official in the Arab Democratic Party in Jabal Muhsin, Abdul Latif Saleh, said that the Lebanese army has entered Jabal Muhsin to implement a deployment plan in and around the tense areas and later on towards a Riva area near an army barrack in Al-Qabba to complete its deployment. It is to be noted that the 2 days clashes in Tripoli have resulted in the killing of 7 people, including a soldier, and the injury of more than 20 others. 17 Pakistani soldiers were killed and 10 others were injured in a terrorist attack in a tribal area northwest of Pakistan, according to the Army's announced toll today. The Army pointed out that a suicide man stormed into an Army checkpoint with a booby-trapped car in north of Waziristan province, which is one of the main Taliban Pakistan strongholds. This attack comes only hours before the expected return of the former Pakistani president, Pervez Musharraf, to the country after 4 years in exile. And our final items, ladies and gentlemen. Today's official press in the Democratic Korea have ruled out any dialogue with the U.S. to solve the outstanding issues and warned Japan of any provocative acts. The Democratic Korea newspaper said today that Pyongyang no longer needs the dialogue with the U.S., criticizing the U.S. demand to abandon its nuclear program. The newspaper asserted that the Korean nuclear deterrent forces can ensure protecting the country's sovereignty and cannot be compromised, considering that it is too late to solve any outstanding problems in the relations with the U.S. through dialogue. The newspaper added that the people and the army in the Democratic Korea are determined to end the decades of conflict with the U.S. through implementing the Songkon military policy to lead the country. And that's the end of the news. Thank you for listening.
Damascus Radio presents News and Views.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. All the indications show that the Doha summit is heading towards giving Syria's seat at the Arab League to the coalition sponsored by Doha and some enemies of Syria. It is strange for the Arab League to commit such judicial and political crimes against one of its founders, ignoring by that the Arab legitimacy, the judicial basis and the ethical issues. The Arab League has, in fact, abandoned its subjective role and put aside its main goals, on top of which is the Palestine cause. Actually, the Arab League has employed all its possibilities in the severe assault in Syria, either through suspending Syria's membership of the Arab League or through imposing the unfair sanctions on Syria and the Syrian people, encouraging the foreign intervention in the country, including the militarization of Syria. Today, the Arab League puts the last nail in its coffin through giving the Syrian seat at the League to the opposition groups and some people who have actually foreign nationalities and do not belong to the Syrian national structure at all. It is funny to see the following title, an American president for Syria, in an American newspaper, in an indication to a person who has the American nationality and he is originally from Syria. In fact, this man has become the chairman of the coalition of the opposition with a nomination from Doha and a blessing from Washington. All resolutions taken by the Arab League during the past 2 years of the crisis in Syria are a clear violation of the Arab and the world norms and principles and even the human values. These resolutions have in fact confined Syria and subjected the Syrian people to hunger and poverty and killing through training, financing and supplying the armed groups with weapons to play havoc and sabotage in the country. Therefore, the Arab brother countries are requested to return to the right track and leave aside what they have so far done against Syria and the Syrian people, as history never forgives those who launch assaults on other peoples.
That was news and views from Damascus Radio. Damascus Radio presents Syrian Local Press Review.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. The Syrian dailies issued today in Damascus highlighted the following headlines news items. In a solemn, official and popular funeral from Grand Umayyad Mosque, religious scholar Sheikh Al-Bouti and his grandson are escorted to their final resting place. Minister of Endowments targeting Sheikh Al-Bouti is targeting real Islam. Minister of Information, the real response to the crime of killing Al-Bouti is that all the Syrians should cling to the national dialogue and amity. The Grand Mufti calls for saving Syria from a global war and says if Syria falls, all will fall. Syrian Foreign Ministry, Syria rejects the resolution of the Human Rights Council because it ignores the crimes of terrorists and the unethical role of those states which finance, train and supply weapons to the terrorist groups. Our armed forces continue their national mission by eliminating scores of terrorists and demolishing their hideouts and criminal tools. Tehran, the West and Israel are the main foes of Syria. London and Paris failed to give any license for arming the terrorists and threatened the European Union of taking unilateral steps. Austria, the European Union was not established for handing in weapons, and it is not going to change its policy and principles. A sit-in solidarity with Syria in the occupied Palestine, Archbishop Hanna turns the ceremony of honoring him to that of honoring the martyr Sheikh Al-Bouti. The Wall Street Journal says the CIA supplies the opposition with intelligence information. Under the title for its security and jewelization, the Syrian daily Athora wrote that Obama's visit to the Israeli entity in the occupied Palestinian territories has carried out lots of indications, on top of which is the security and jewelization of this entity as a priority for the American strategy and policy. The daily went on to say that Obama's statement about peace was not far from the wishes of those who want this peace to be achieved in the wake of the Israeli utter rejection of this peace. Obama had earlier promised during his speech in Cairo, in the Cairo University, to achieve peace and that Washington is interested in the Arab cause, and during his term in office, the Palestinian rights would return and the Palestinian state will be independent, but none of these issues has so far been achieved despite the beginning of Obama's second and last term in office. Today, the history repeats itself as Obama promises of peace, prosperity and stability, but in reality, we see only wars and threats against some states and the commitment of the Israeli security and jewelization.
That was a review of the Syrian local press issued in Damascus this morning.
You are still tuned to the broadcasting service of the Syrian Arab Republic, Damascus. Ladies and gentlemen, to conclude our English translation for tonight, let's have a look once more at the main stories. Prime Minister Wael Halaqi stresses the deep fraternity relations binding Syria and Lebanon as he receives leader of the Syrian Socialist Nationalist Party in Lebanon. Minister of State for National Reconciliation Affairs Ali Haider says bets on undermining Syria have failed, stressing that the Syrian army will confront whoever tries to tamper with Syria's security. Iranian Deputy Foreign Minister Hossein Amir Abdullahian expresses Tehran's deep concern over the use of chemical weapons by terrorists in Syria, warning the US, Britain, France and some regional states of the repercussions of this act on the region's security. Units of our armed forces keep on chasing and eliminating a number of terrorists and destroying their dens and warehouses in Latakia, Idlib and Deir ez-Zor. The American Wall Street Journal reveals that the CIA has trained terrorists in camps near countries, near Syria, and supplied them with intelligence information. Iraqi Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki stresses that the cases of extremism in some Arab states stem from vicious currents supported by some regional states. And cautious calm prevails in the Lebanese city of Tripoli following 2 days of clashes in Jabal Mahsin and Darab al-Tabbana as the army implements a deployment plan to calm the situation. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the end of our English transmission for tonight. You can join us again tomorrow at the same time and on the same frequency. Until then, this is Damascus Radio with all staff members wishing you all the best and a very good night.